right. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to our next installment or session here. I guess it would be episode of the Mystic Shaman with Sherry Mosley. So we are trying to do this bi-weekly or weekly. And for this week's episode, I am continuing to talk about what it is like to be a psychic medium who also practices shamanism as a way of connecting to the spirit world. And today we're going to talk about a few of my experiences, which I'm calling unwanted encounters. Unwanted in the sense of they are not initiated from my side. They were initiated from the spiritual realm to me. And this is what usually occurs when you are a psychic medium and things are just open. The channel is just open. There's not much of a filter or a doorway, and the door is just kind of open. And so there's contact that just happens. Okay. And when you're first, maybe getting used to your psychic abilities, this may happen a lot. I found that I was maybe very shut down initially because these unwanted encounters were happening. So it's really just a matter of, learning that you do have a say in the encounters. It's much like a human being coming up to you and interacting with you, which I didn't realize in the moment because I was so overwhelmed with connection or contact happening. And at the time, this was, before I was doing my more shamanic work and connecting in a more benevolent way, meaning that I'm connecting to things beyond the Middle Earth plane. The Middle Earth plane being where it's just through the veil. So I talked about that in the first episode, episode 1. In shamanism, there's the upper world and the lower world, and the middle world through the veil is more or less where the passed on souls are. If they're coming from the higher realms or the lower world, then they are more spiritual teachers or power animals there to assist you, right? And so when you're just open psychically, there's a lot coming in. So for me, I have a list here of some of these events. Oh, and another point was, I did talk about last time that when these occurrences were happening when I was younger, they came in as more of like a premonition or feeling like I was having deja vu. And as I got older, the abilities more or less matured. And this in shamanism, you usually really have your abilities starting to mature as you go through puberty and you become more of an adult. So in high school, I felt my abilities coming in more. I had a really strong interest in the occult, looking up. There was an old series on Time magazine. They had a series of books all about the occult, the paranormal, in the library, at the school library. So I would spend time looking at those, and I'm trying to think. I think that was about the only books that I was really getting into at that time. And then, you know, in my, I think it was more my college years then. In high school, I was pretty, I guess, busy socializing as most teenagers are, generally speaking. And it wasn't until I went to England, Brunel University, on a study abroad program that I started really interacting with passed on souls. And, everything in Europe is really old. So this is usually a very popular place for passed on souls to be, is in old buildings, old places. There's a lot of history in those places. And in this campus, it was actually a converted mansion where I was staying that people used to live in, right? So there was a long history there that I didn't have the full history, but and it was an old place, and the garden outside was pretty beautiful, but it had a lot of like gargoyles, and it was very English, I guess you could say. And this was in Egham, Surrey, so it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And it wasn't a regular campus. This was an extended campus. And I was studying product design, graphic design at the time. And so I was there for 6 months on that program. But when I got to the university and I went to my room, it felt very old. First off, you can just feel old buildings. They have, a different energy, a different resonance. And so I felt that energy first. And then I could just feel that there was a spirit that was there and it wanted my attention. And I was not comfortable with my abilities. And I wasn't comfortable with that I had to live in this dorm room for 6 months and that there was a spirit that wanted to hang out with me there. So I had a little talk, a one-way conversation saying, that I need to be here for the next 6 months and I don't want to interact. I don't want to be communicating with you. And after that, it stopped. I didn't feel their presence. Maybe they were just kind of checking things out. I'm not really sure. But after that, it stopped. I didn't feel that there was the presence of a passed on soul in the room. And what that actually feels like is like a person being in the room, but they don't have a physical body. So I usually compare this to saying it's like feeling somebody standing behind you or on the other side of the room, and you may have your back turned, but you still know that there is a person in the room. There's just a sense of that. Generally speaking, most people have that sense, right? So that's what it felt like. So Brunel University was the first one. And then I talk about this other one in my book, in my Akashic Enlightenment book in the introduction, where my partner at the time, we were visiting Paris, traveling because I was already in England, right? And so traveling to Paris and staying at a hostel there. And this place was so old, the walls were kind of buckling. So there were these big kind of warps in the walls. It looked kind of creepy. Anyway, so we were staying in this dorm room and there were maybe 6 beds in there. And because it was a hostel, sorry, not a dorm, a hostel, right? And this was before the internet, you couldn't look things up, you couldn't plan ahead. I had a book that listed where the hostels were so that you could find them. And it was actually back then, it was a pretty cool way to meet new people traveling. But in this case, there was nobody else there. And we went up the stairs and we stayed there. I didn't sleep whole night. There was just so much spiritual activity going on. And I could just feel the spirits kind of circling above us. And there was this huge, creepy mirror right at the head of the bed. And so, just the feng shui of the room, there was just so much energy also from the mirror being there. But, I felt that spirit circling around, and I just felt others in the room. And they were very active. So, it's almost like someone running around the room while you're trying to sleep. So I had a very, very hard time trying to sleep. I remember I was listening to Enya. I had my little portable CD player, listening to Enya, trying to calm down and get some sleep. And in the morning, we checked out, and I told him what had happened, and he said, "Well, I didn't say anything, because I didn't want to freak you out." So it was so potent there that he could even sense it. And he wasn't necessarily psychic. He was just, I think sensitive and a water sign. It could, sense the presence, although maybe most people could have. But yeah, traveling through Paris, there's so many dead souls there. I will never go back. I really have no interest in going back to Paris, France. There's just been so many people mistreated and passed on from that mistreatment that it's a very intense energy. So I don't try to immerse myself in those situations because I wasn't really ready for working with that energy. But once I got my shamanic training in 2010, they actually taught us how to cross a soul over. Okay. And at first, that was a little intimidating, but I did learn how to do that. So technically, I am trained to cross a soul over. So if there is a soul in a place, I do have the ability to connect with them and clear them from the space. And the other example I have is actually kind of similar to that, also in Europe. And this was in Copenhagen, just driving in the car. And I was with someone who lived there. And, people like to have fun with my psychic ability. Sometimes they don't believe it, and they'll know the history of a building, or they will know the history of a picture that they show me. And so they they will kind of put me in places to see what happens. So as we went by this building, I he didn't say anything, and I just said, there's a woman in that building. Something, really upsetting happened there. And he did then tell me the story. I mean, the building looked dilapidated. It was old. It was abandoned, kind of in the middle of a city, though. And he said that a woman passed away there, and a bunch of children as well. And I didn't really want the full story, but it was very confirming to what I was sensing there. And, this was more recently. So I just let go of the story, and I just kind of peacefully from the car, just assisted those souls to gently cross over so that they could have peace, because they were not at peace. And they were also very, very calm, right? I've dealt with some that are not very calm or friendly. And that example is actually, that was at an inn in Northern California, like an old Victorian inn. And the soul there, again, just sleeping there, the soul there, I just felt that there was an angry man, and he was just very angry. And that was stressful to me, because this person was angry, and I could feel that energy, and that he had an agenda and he wanted me to do something. And this was before my shamanic training. So before I felt more comfortable with, transitioning a soul over. And I really just kind of shut down at that point, because it was just too scary for me. I didn't like that aggressive energy. And so, that kind of led me more to getting my training, because I realized I couldn't keep shutting things down, right? That it was calling to me to do something with it. Okay. And so that led me to then get my training. And then after I did the training, then it was easier, to transition the soul over. And another example would be, I had a girlfriend go travel to Ireland with her partner, and this was back in maybe 2011. Yeah, sometime. Oh no, maybe it was more like 2016 actually. And she was taking pictures, and she texted me a couple of pictures and asked me what I was feeling or sensing in the pictures, because she knew I was into all the Akashic work. And so I I responded really strongly to one of the pictures. I was like, "Oh my God, I don't know what happened here, but don't go in there. That place is all bad. don't even go near that place. Just don't. And she told me later that there was, I guess it was where they kept or imprisoned a murderer, someone who had murdered a lot of people, like a serial killer or something. And I guess maybe he passed away there. I don't really know. But the energy was incredibly potent. And that was just from a picture that she sent me. So that's how it can also work, is through images or objects, right? I can sense what's going on. So those are just some examples of more of just the pure psychic mediumship, interacting with passed on souls. So you can only imagine what it's like when you meet people in the waking world. And now that I do Akashic Enlightenment, all of that has shifted to more or less being able to see the truth of a soul, a person, and knowing when they are not being in truth, meaning they're coming from a place of false self, which is the self that is based more in the ego. So this could be traumatic patterns, anything karmic behavior cycles from when you are younger. And this would be karmic cycles from ancestry, passed on family members, right? These cycles, karmic cycles, keep coming in. And so I can sense that. And when that sense first started coming on, when someone would get triggered, meaning that they are acting in a way that is from the past, it is not what's happening in the present moment. They are playing out something from the past that happened to them, projecting it onto the person, me in this case, and having the emotional reaction and playing it out. And what would happen for me is I would actually see a clairvoyant movie playing of the trauma that they had that was making them act like this. So I would see the actual moment that they were playing out, because they were not present anymore. They were playing out a scenario in the past, and I would see this happening. And usually, when that would happen to that extreme, the person would then be very shocked that they acted that way, mostly because I'm not engaging at all and I'm actually witnessing the truth of what is going on, which then invites them to become more present with what is happening. And this intensity has dialed down as I have gotten more integrated with Akashic Enlightenment and working with it, and my psychic mediumship abilities more integrated with working with higher frequencies and seeing the truth of a person. And yeah, so that's how it's integrated up until this point. And those are just some examples of how it has functioned over time, the psychic mediumship ability. So if you have psychic mediumship abilities, Akashic Enlightenment is a great tool to help you connect with the spirit world in a benevolent way. And if you don't have psychic mediumship abilities, Akashic Enlightenment is still a great way to connect with your true self, to step out of those patterns and living from a place of falseness, right? So I hope that you enjoyed our little talk today. I think that's all of the stories that I have for today on my list. I hope it helps you understand more of what it's like to be a psychic medium involved in shamanism and the spirit world, and moving that to also connecting with doing healing work, or allowing people to heal themselves through seeing their true selves with how you use your psychic ability to interact with somebody on a true level of their being. All right. So thank you so much for joining our episode today here on the Mystic Shaman with Sherry Mosley, me, and sending you all so much love and light. I hope that you are enjoying your journey, and we will say bye for now and see you at the next episode.